Welcome. We're going to go ahead and get started. So, my name is Carrie Warren. I am the Interim Director of Parks and Recreation at the time, and since taking that role, I am assuming the role of chair for this committee. Most of you I have not met before, so if we could go around and introduce yourself so I can put a name with a face, I'd greatly appreciate that.
Bernard White.
Reggie Pender, we are.
Curtis Stewart.
Selena Massey.
And James Woods.
All right, it's nice to meet you all. Look forward to working with you. At this time, if we got one more coming in. You can come in right here. We've just gone through and introduced ourselves, so if you'd like to introduce yourself. I'm Carrie Warren. I'm the Interim Director of Parks and Recreation.
Elijah Brown.
Nice to meet you, and I believe you're going to say the prayer for us tonight.
Yes. Let's bow. Father God, we thank you for your love. We thank you for your mercy. We thank you for waking us up this morning. Lord, we're asking you to go with all the bereaved families, especially the ones that have succumbed to COVID. I had several members of my family, and also we're asking you to go with the Sampson family, and then the cousins of the Sampson family. Go with them. Go with the city in a very special way, Lord. Go with this state and go with this country in a very special way. And Lord, go with this board that we may discuss and that we've come to some conclusion of what we need to do about Stanley White. In Jesus' name we do ask, in your holy righteous name, amen.
Amen.
Thank you. At this time, we'll do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, Mr. Bullock, if you'll please do a roll call.
Leander Morgan Jr. Selena Massey.
Present.
Curtis Stewart.
Present.
James Woods.
Present.
Bernard White.
Here.
Reginald Pender.
Here.
Elijah Brown.
Here.
Barbara Lee. Carrie Warren Green.
Here. And Miss Alderwoman Jamisha Harris. Okay. All right, so I sent out minutes for review. We had the January 2021 minutes and also the February 2021 minutes that needed to be approved. Did y'all have the opportunity to review those? Are there any corrections that need to be made?
I'd like to make a motion that, Bernard White, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the minutes as given with necessary changes.
Okay, I have a second.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, the minutes approved. Next, I want to discuss the meeting schedule. I know as of now, it's scheduled the third Tuesday of the month. Going forward, of course, if we have something we need to meet on and we have a full agenda, we can certainly have that meeting. Is that still a day that's suitable for everyone? Third Tuesday of the month?
If no one has any problem with it, I mean, they say if it ain't broke, don't try to fix it, leave it like it is.
Okay.
Anybody want to make a change, then we can go along with that. I have no problem with that.
Okay. Anybody else?
That's good.
Okay. All right, so now I'm going to have Mr. Davis come up. He's going to give us an update since our last meeting.
Good evening, folks. I thought I would swing by this evening just to chat with you for a little bit, to maybe help give you some direction, find some direction as to what you would like to do going forward. If you remember from the ordinance that creates this commission, you had the 4 responsibilities. We're now down to potentially still talking about programming to the extent you would like to. We've got potential fundraising if you would like to entertain those ideas. And then we simply have communicating information to the community. So there are 3 possible things you can continue to do. Taking them in terms of what might be easier in terms of communication, my recommendation to you would to have your standing meeting date, and then your chairperson can circulate an email to help you understand whether there may or may not be something to come talk about. If there's no news to report, you don't need to come away from your homes and families and dinner to hear there's nothing to report. But to the extent something meaningful has happened, you should know about it so that you can be educated on it and then share the information with the community. So that's just going to happen on a month-to-month basis. I will tell you in terms of an update where we are. At Tuesday, this upcoming Tuesday night's board meeting, the Board of Aldermen will be adopting a resolution to use a new construction method, a new bidding method, with the hopes of expediting the construction process. A number of years ago, the statute was amended to allow for what's called a design-build construction method. The one that we're all familiar with is the standard one where you go hire engineers. Those engineers draw up some plans. You then bid the plans, and then construction starts. With the design bid process, you submit what's called a request for qualifications. So we send out into the world a notice of what the city's trying to accomplish in building a new recreation center. And that scope of work will include not only the construction, but the design, architecture, and engineering services all in one. So you'll find one firm that has the ability to do everything. Once that company is chosen, and it's chosen based on qualifications, not by bids, right? So all those companies that have an interest and think they are qualified and want to participate submit their application in response to that RFQ. Then city staff goes through their qualifications, ranks them, and makes a recommendation to the Board of Aldermen based on the qualifications. At that point, when the most qualified company is chosen, then the city negotiates with that company over price. If they can't come to comfortable terms on price, they go to the next qualified bidder, and they keep doing that until they are comfortable with the price. Why would the city go through that new process? The answer is speed. The experience across the state and country is that that process can knock off 6 to 12 months of construction time. 2 things happen when you reduce your construction time. You reduce your cost because you're not dealing with inflation over the back 6 to 12 months of that material pricing. That's one thing that happens. The other thing that happens, particularly in a facility like this, you're not providing the community with much needed services. So speed does matter. You could lose a whole school year of kids that didn't get to participate in a nice brand new facility. So those are the 2 typical reasons you do it: speed and cost. The hope and expectation is that the cost of this method will not exceed the cost had we gone down the traditional path, right? The other conceptual thing that we see happen, and I think it proves itself out in real life, is you're not paying 2 separate companies to do 2 different things. You're not hiring an architect and an engineering firm to design the plans. and then you're going and hiring a second company to go do the construction. Both of those are under one roof, and what happens is once you get your design set, and largely the design, the volume of this building is largely set. There'll be some design features to change, but largely the facility has been planned. So once the architects and engineers get that footprint satisfactory, they can begin construction on the footprint while we move up the building. So you can design while you're building. That's one way they reduce the cost. But you also find that your design and engineering costs come in less because you're not sitting in a room dreaming things up, going out into the field, changing your mind, coming back and redesigning, then going back in the field. You design and you build as you go, which oftentimes saves 20 or 30% of your architect and engineering fees. That's more money that goes into the physical building, right? The Board of Aldermen have already established the project budget. It will not be any less than that. So the goal is to get more money into the bricks and mortar, not into the soft costs. All that makes sense? So that's going to be happening Tuesday evening. Wednesday morning, the RFQ is already prepared. It will be ready to send out to qualified bidders. To the extent anyone has reached out to you, any companies that would be qualified, pass them on to the City Hall. Carrie, anyone that you know in the city, pass those company names on. The more robust list we have, the better. So please feel free to do that. So that's the next big milestone. Next Tuesday and Wednesday are the big milestones. There'll be 4 to 8 weeks of getting those RFQs in, getting them tabulated. That tabulation process is fairly objective, right? We're not basing these on how beautiful your headquarters is or how charming your people are. It's based on objective standards. What have you done? What are the costs? We're looking for qualifications. So this is based on the most qualified, not the people that we like the best, the people that we think might be the least expensive. You're measuring this on objective standards, and that criteria has been set up already. That's a process that the city has a lot of experience in. There's a lot of contracts that we use where you're basing it off qualifications and not on price. And you'd be surprised how that does, in the end, tend to rank people based on their qualifications, which tends to mirror their work experience. Bathrooms, if you've been following the Board of Aldermen meetings, city's working with FEMA on the budget to replace the bathrooms and changing the scope of that to free up some more money that might be used elsewhere within the park. As you know, the vision is not just to complete the Stanley White Rec Center, but to incorporate that into a reimagining of Henderson Park. So the city's working with FEMA to change that scope of work on the bathrooms, to get the bathrooms done, but also free up some excess money that can be reallocated into the park. I don't want to break any news tonight, but I would encourage you to watch next Tuesday's Board of Aldermen meeting. There'll be a little bit of news there that I'm expecting the board to announce, where they are hoping to jumpstart a little bit of fundraising for Henderson Park, which ties into your mission. If you as a group want to try to work on some fundraising, you've got this body to do that. That's a lot of work, takes a lot of passion, but it's an opportunity there for you if you want to. But certainly not an obligation. Beyond that, going forward, I think your decision for yourselves is, what, if anything, do you want to do more than be the receiver of information and ask questions and then take that into the community? And then Carrie can let you know by email going forward on a month-to-month basis when we need to meet again to reconvene with some breaking news. I'm sure once we have identified the qualified contractor, we'll be in a position to meet and talk about that. I have had some questions, and the board will discuss this in more detail Tuesday, about minority participation in the construction process. Two bodies of law apply to that: federal laws that apply, and you've got city policy that applies as well. As a rule of thumb, those contracts require generally a 10% minority participation. What happens is the qualified company, the qualified design build contractor will have an obligation to hire subcontractors to meet their women-owned enterprises and minority-owned enterprises. So that contractor will have that obligation. That will be something that they are very accustomed to. So that won't be a new thing for them to consider, and that will be one of the criteria that the city looks at in choosing that contractor, to make sure that they have a record of not only understanding but complying with those requirements. I've heard other questions about whether the city can mandate that local contractors be hired. And I'm going to update the law on that for the Board of Aldermen. Last time I did this a number of years ago, there was no legal authority for a local government to mandate that its own citizens, own residents, own companies were treated preferentially in the construction process. But I'll update that, and that will be part of our discussion next Tuesday night. Appreciate the issue. I understand the issue, and by all means, we do want to keep our money locally whenever we can.
Yeah.
And to that extent, that you know subcontractors that would be qualified to participate, that is also something that ultimately we can pass on to the design build company as they look to round out their list of subcontractors to participate in the project. Questions, thoughts? Yes, sir.
My question would be, if you get a contractor and you institute minorities or local or whatever, how can you make that company honest? What can you install in that amendment? Because the question I'm answering, and the reason I'm asking is, we asked those same questions about an renovation of Stanley White, and they did say that they had to,
Okay.
and it never happened.
Okay.
So if that is a law,
Sure.
local and federal law,
Yeah.
how can we make that happen?
Yeah, let's do this, and I appreciate you mentioning that question. Let's talk to our FEMA consultant. My best guess, and we're all entitled to the right answer, but my best guess is FEMA is going to require documentation of that participation. FEMA is not going to accept, we tried hard and we did it, trust us. But let's make sure. We all deserve to see the paperwork to understand that's exactly what happened. Yeah, good issue.
Thank you.
Let's keep that one going. I mean, I know you're not going to forget that, but let's make sure through the process that I give you an answer on that, so that I remember to follow up and make sure that we see the paperwork to ensure that's happening throughout the process and before we get to the end and it can't be corrected.
Gotcha.
I think, you next. I agree with Brother Brown. I think we've had a long discussion about this. And it's about keeping money in the city of New Bern and Craven County, but giving people an opportunity to work and use their skills. And a lot of times they've been overlooked.
Sure.
Some contractor come in, he brings his own crew. And, so he might bring a certain amount of minority, but they're not from here. We're not growing off of it.
Yes, sir. And that's where I'm gonna for Tuesday night's Board of Aldermen meeting, share some thoughts with the Board of Aldermen about that. And that's where I've got to update the law on that. Again, last time I checked, there was no legal authority to allow for that, to mandate that New Bern citizens or companies had a preferential right to participate. But I'll have an official answer by Tuesday on that.
Appreciate it.
I guess my couple questions are, so you said originally it sounded like you were saying the RFQ was completed and it was already dispersed, or you said
No,
it has not been
It's
dispersed?
completed. The draft is ready. It cannot be sent out till Wednesday morning.
Got it.
I want the Board of Aldermen to adopt the criteria first.
Yep. And then who are the city staff that evaluate the RFQs that come in? Who are those folks?
I don't know. We'll get that list to you. I don't know the answer to that.
Is that going to be answered on Tuesday?
We'll get
Or
it
is that-
before then, yeah, we'll have it Tuesday, yeah.
Would you say it's the Board of Aldermen and maybe
Ultimately, it
the
goes to the Board
city
of,
manager?
ultimately, it
How's
goes to the Board of Aldermen. The Board of Aldermen will ultimately let the contract. But the compilation, I can tell you the last few projects have been done with department heads, city manager, and then the recommendation goes to the Board of Aldermen. But I can't tell you was it every last department head or not. That's why I'm hesitating.
Got it.
I know it's development services, engineering, city manager historically has done that work.
So, just to be clear, has there been any promises made to CP&L? They are a design and engineer company, and they obviously designed this building. And so, I don't know another way to ask this question, but have there been any backdoor deals to say, hey, being that you guys have, and maybe that's not the way to approach it, but that's
No,
what happens,
sure.
right? So these guys have designed this building already.
Sure.
And obviously, they're an engineering company.
Right.
So has it been some conversation where if you guys have a contractor for design build, that they're going to have to work with CP&L?
Not that I'm aware of, but I wouldn't be, honestly. A lot of folks think that as a city attorney, I'm in every single meeting of every public official and every city employee there is.
Yeah.
And the truth is, I'm not in any.
So is there any contractual agreement with them in
Absolutely
regards
not.
to that?
No,
Okay.
there cannot be. Yeah, good question. There legally cannot be. There is no written agreement. Whether someone thinks that, believes that, wants that, I have no idea. Certainly
Understand.
not in my presence. My only contact with that company, were those the people that did the presentations with you?
They were
Yeah.
the consulting company.
My contact with that company was my one evening here with them. Otherwise, I've never dealt with them before. But legally, this is a real RFQ. Right? We're not pretending. This is a real legal process. However, if that's the business they are in and they won the first round, it suggests that they are qualified.
Well, they're not contractors though. They're just they're engineers and they're architects. They're not. I don't think they're
Then they
contractors.
wouldn't be qualified. If this is going to be a design build company.
No, I
that's
understand.
special- yeah, okay, gotcha.
But I'm saying they have put together this design already.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So I'm just saying, obviously, it makes maybe a contractor wants to work with them. Maybe they don't. They already have obviously
Got
their
it.
internal situation already.
Got it.
So that's why I'm asking
I'm
that
with
question.
You. I'm with
Yeah.
you. I see. Yeah.
And so then you mentioned fundraising. What was the fundraising component that you were speaking of as far as the committee?
Yeah, in the resolution that created this commission, there were four areas of responsibility that the commission could deal with. One of those was finding more resources to put into the project, which would include both the center and the park campus. So that's where that came from. And again, those are not duties and obligations. It's something that you can take up. You have the legal authority to take that up if you want to.
Got it. So as far as the requests for qualifications, those companies that are submitting, we will not be involved in that process or even looking at that or knowing who those
Yes.
companies are. All that will go to the city. Our primary responsibility, as I'm hearing you kind of frame and saying, hey, what is the purpose of this group moving forward,
Yes.
is programming, fundraising, and what would be the third piece of that?
Communicating information to the community.
And then you mentioned timing. What is the timetable once you guys have picked a firm that the ground
Yeah.
breaking
Our
happens?
best, and right now we're guessing, until we hire someone who can really tell us we don't know the answer. We are expecting an 18-month construction period, give or take. That is our hope, based on projects of similar sizes across the state. We are hoping to mobilize within 6 to 10 weeks to have that company identified and mobilized with a groundbreaking in 90 days. That's the hope. I can tell you any week now, the site will be prepped. The Gantt sandwich shop is going to be demolished and that site cleaned up. The Gaston Boulevard house, we call it the little brick building behind the Black Swan on Broad Street. Redevelopment Commission is going to be moving that any week now. And the city is putting out an RFP for the Black Swan to anyone who wants to bid to move it. And we're giving folks 2 or 3 weeks to pitch us bids. to move that house and take it away. Your bid can be $1, so pass the word. If somebody is inspired to move that house somewhere else, I'm guessing it'll be a very, very low bid that wins, if anything. If not, the city will demolish that as well. So we're hoping to have that site cleared and prepped in the next 60 to 90 days, ready to break ground.
My last question is, once the RFQ is released, which is next Wednesday, you're saying within a 4 to 6 week time frame, you guys hope to have submissions and be able to pick that
Exactly.
contractor?
Exactly. Yes, sir.
That's all I have.
Good question. Yes, ma'am.
I have 4. Being familiar with the RFQ process, in this process, how do we mitigate the same companies receiving the contracts, i.e., if we're going by their qualifications, which is, a great process as well. There are construction companies who quite possibly may have never gotten the opportunity or as many opportunities as some others. So how do we, in essence, fight the possibility of the same company receiving contracts over and over again because they appear most qualified because they get the most opportunities?
Sure, no, and it's a self-fulfilling prophecy, and I completely understand it, and I don't have an answer for that. The law requires that you choose based on qualifications.
Right.
And that's a state statute. It's not a goal or aspiration or a policy that we've adopted ourselves. It's called the Minnie-Brooks Act. Applies to architects, designers, surveyors, et cetera, any kind of professional service. I call it a beauty contest, and that's the process that you go through. But I've always had the same question. Wow, if you've never won the pageant, how do you ever win the pageant, right? And I simply don't have a good answer. That my only hope is, in real life, those participants get to participate in something. They start small and work their way up through qualifications. That's my hope. But I do worry that people never, ever get the chance.
Understood. Second question would be, with the uncertainty and the breaks in our supply chains, how can we guarantee that this process is faster than any other process, considering supplies will be an issue going forward?
Yeah, huge worry. It's a huge worry. The only thing that I believe to be true is that by expediting the design and the construction, we will save time in that category. However, if we have to wait for 3 to 6 months for steel to show up,
Right.
we've lost traction. And could that have been made up if we'd gone the traditional route? I don't know the answer. I think the Board of Aldermen is inclined to do everything possible to make sure it goes as fast as possible, recognizing that real life may control the answer and it may not turn out that way.
Understood.
Yeah.
And hopefully as fair as possible.
Exactly.
My third question is, when we do finally get a company that is going to build our building, is there a possible way for this or our group to facilitate some sort of public meet and greet, I don't know, the city officials or the community, just so that the community could possibly have an opportunity to kind of tell them how much this building means to them, because they may or may not know about the history of it, and what it would mean for them to have people who in that community actually help build that building.
My own 2 cents, and I'm not the king of anything, but my own 2 cents would be that if I were the company that was chosen, I would absolutely want to do that and want to participate in that. And I would expect the board to encourage that. But no promises, but I would like to think that would happen. It makes a lot of sense to me.
And then last but not least, I know that there's a process that my family's involved in New York that has compliance officers that actually go around to construction sites and ensure that they have the appropriate amount of minorities on that construction site and a part of that contract. Is that a possibility going forward for someone or some entity to have compliance officers?
Yeah, let's ask, and I'm going to make sure that I deliver you an answer on that. My hope would be the answer is that is part of the construction process, and that's built into the compliance is built into the budget. But let's make sure, obviously. I can tell you the city has its own independent safety officer that randomly picks sites. As a full-time job. But that person does not do the minority women piece of this. But I would expect and hope with the federal FEMA contract that that is a contractual requirement, that you document and verify that that's exactly what's happening.
Okay.
But keep reminding me of this, because we all deserve an answer on that one.
All right.
All good questions.
I have one more question based on something that she just said. So who are the chosen companies in this area that generally get those type of bids or have those qualifications?
I simply don't know the answer to that. I just don't know. I expect staff has put together a master list from just going out in the world. Typically, you just start with who's built what in North Carolina or the Southeast. We know cities that have built rec centers, and we work backward. Who did it? You happy with it? How'd it go? And we compile a list of names. That's why I mentioned to you, if you happen to have any names that you would propose adding to the list between now and Tuesday, Wednesday, let someone know.
I guess that would be a little premature if you haven't released the RFQ, though, right?
No, but it's going to be released. It's going to be sent to people specifically as well. I mean, it's available, but it's also sent out to people that we already know have called and asked and inquired about it. Is my understanding.
Oh, so a design build could request that RFQ to
Sure.
be sent directly to them.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. The fear is if we just have it on our little website, no one calls. So you send it out to the world, to engineers, you send it to everyone in hoping that someone gets some traction with it. So there's no harm in that for sure.
Scott, I have, just thinking about what Curtis mentioned earlier about CP&L and thinking about what they told us about a building, actually a rec center they did in Garner or somewhere in the western part of the state. How long has this law been on the books that you're telling us about? Or
Design build?
yes,
2014.
that being in mind, I believe they built that building, they showed us it was 18, was it? 2018, they did a build on a rec center. So I can understand why Curtis asked that question about CP&L.
And I don't know if that was a design build project. Design build projects are much more rare than your traditional design, bid, construct. I can tell you the Greenwood.
Okay, so it's not the norm.
It is
It's
not.
on the books to
It's
use.
rare. It's rare.
It's
Yeah.
on the books to use, but it's not the norm that's normally used.
Exactly, that is right. The legislature wants to give that tool to local governments for unique situations.
I got you. Okay. All right.
And this would, in my view, qualify as a unique situation. We've got kids and families who have been displaced from their recreational services for years now. And with young people, every year matters in my view.
So what ends up happening if, say, by just happenstance that we get no one to meet those qualifications?
Yeah, that's a fair question. We're back to traditional.
Okay.
We're then back to doing an RFQ for architects, engineers to have the beauty contest with that team to then go through the design architect piece, which has largely been done and visualized. So hopefully that wouldn't be too burdensome. But still, that's a whole separate process.
Okay.
Subject to that company and COVID and all that, and then the next construction company. But that's the only other option we have.
Okay.
The only other design build that I know of, and I'm sure there are plenty more, but I just happen to know that Greenville Convention Center used this a number of years ago.
What about on the park Greenville just opened up this weekend?
I just don't know.
I got you.
Yeah, I just don't know. It is used. I don't mean to say that it is rare or never used.
Right.
But the percentage of it compared to the traditional is much, much smaller.
Okay.
A couple of things I'd like to add to this. I think I heard Mr. Curtis say something about inspection, whatever it is. Well, I'm gonna go back, I'm gonna take you back, when they first built Stanley White, they had, I was with this man named Mr. Vales, Mr. Willie Vales, was a community person in NAACP and everything else. He said, Bernard, my boy, come and go with me. I said, where you going at? He said, I'm going over here to look at Stanley White. So he took the prints and looked at Stanley White. We walked on through the little part that was there. He said, he said, they following the instructions on that. He came back later on and told me, he said, come on, let's go over to West New Bern. We went over to West New Bern. He found some parts over there that wasn't according to the print. He said, well, I guess we can go home now. So he went home and he sent a letter to, I think, the state. He sent a letter up there. And 2 weeks later, 2 gentlemen came down. They made West New Bern tear down everything that wasn't according to their print.
Right.
Okay, so who we gonna have, it has to be somebody other than the city or person that go around looking and checking.
Right.
You have to get out there yourself.
Yeah.
You have to know the prints, know what you're looking at, because it was gonna build. If we were just building that one and not building the other one, nobody would have never known but the people who were building the other one. But both of them had to be built the same. Those are things that most people don't take on consideration. And at that point in time back there then, they had just as many people of color working on that building that building. The building
Yeah, that's great.
basically built by black people.
Yes, sir. Well, Tuesday night, tune in Tuesday, and we'll have a much deeper discussion on these issues. By then, I'll have some of these answers, because I'm sure the Board of Aldermen will want to know some of the same things. So a lot of these questions can be answered then, and we'll have more detail on the women and the minority enterprise participation as well. The other thing not to lose track of, and I know it's not an $8 million contract, but to the extent the city would hire and contract out work for park improvements, those are smaller contracts where the city has a lot more control over and can do private bids. So there's an opportunity there where we can, have a little more control over the work and who gets the work. We good?
Have any other questions?
I have a question, but I don't know whether it's for the Board of Aldermen or for you. But
Sure.
Being an attorney, you may know. I've requested numerous of times when I stood up and spoke during the Alderman meetings, because I sit and listen at how well the city grant writer does for the city of New Bern. Stanley White is a part of the city of New Bern.
Yes, sir.
And I've requested over and over for this grant writer that gets thousands and thousands of dollars for other things in the city of New Bern, but when it comes to Park and Rec, Stanley White, it haven't happened yet. And I'm still requesting, so I don't know who to talk to. Well, I need to speak
Yes,
to
sir.
the alderman, or do I need to speak to you, or who?
I'm hearing what you're saying. Carrie and I will look into this and get you some answers on that. And the question that I have for grant writing is, who steers that? And is it a function of just the pots of money? I know in many cases, those pots of money are earmarked for certain projects. However, I also know that Parks and Rec is generally one of those areas that funders like to fund. And it may well be that if we had a clearer picture on the revitalization of Henderson Park, a reimagining of that park. There's been great ideas about taking the foundation and using it for basketball, lighting it. I've heard ideas of doing a large covered shelter. Certainly the bathrooms are on go. I know crowning the field is a real issue to get it to drain. And I've seen plans for these. I just don't know is that everyone's final answer, the best answer in light of recent events. But if we had a plan that we've all bought into, the board and the community, I think it would be much easier to go out and raise money, both in just pure private fundraising as well as grants. And what I like about the private side of the fundraising that you're going to hear more about Tuesday is a lot of those grants are matching funds. So if you know that you've got a pot of money of $20,000, $30,000, $50,000 to go match a grant, start doubling your money, gets exciting very fast.
And we often write grants within Parks and Recreation, so, if something comes available that we can apply for, then that's definitely something we can research.
Yeah, do you know, Carrie, do you, in that department, is there a specific process that you go through to identify opportunities for grants?
Well, if there's grants available that would, particularly work for a specific project,
Mhm.
we go after those grants, of course, with permission from the Board of Aldermen,
Mhm.
And if we see something come across, because we often will receive things from NRPA or NCRPA on upcoming grants. And if we see something, that would help us, then we definitely look into it.
Do you do that in-house, or does, I can see her face, can't think of her name, Margaret Shields, does she draft those, or you guys do it?
We do it. The last couple of grants we've received, Foster and I have been responsible for facilitating those.
Would you do this, and forgive me for giving you homework, but whenever we meet again next, could you have like a little cheat sheet of the last couple of grants that you applied for, and maybe the last couple that you received, and the amounts, just so we can have some context for that?
Absolutely.
If this commission wants to take up some fundraising, that would be helpful to understand, and also too, if you have any forecast of what might be out there coming up, that would be
Okay,
great.
definitely.
Yes, ma'am.
How does the existing grant process work on the building? Because I know before we had that one, I think it lasted 25 or 50 years for the $500,000.
Right.
What's the requirements to continue to honor that grant when we go to the new location? Do we just need to make sure that the building is being built to the pre-existing?
Yeah, I don't know the details of that, other than the park has to remain a park. And that may be the only condition. The question is, Henderson Park got a facelift, a decade or two ago, a couple decades ago? It's been a long time.
I don't know if you're talking about the building.
Well, the money that was received
Was it,
for the
That
building
was it
was,
the front?
Probably around the same time that they did that grant, right?
That was a LWCF grant, I believe, or either part of, and that
Part of.
means, that
That's what I'm talking about.
the park has to remain in perpetuity for a park.
yes.
So does that transfer, so I'm assuming it transfers over to the new location?
It remains at Henderson Park.
Yeah, the obligation, I don't know, I think the obligation was to the dirt, not to the building. So the obligation stays with the dirt, that dirt must be.
That is very interesting.
Yeah, I don't know, I'm just guessing. I'm not ready, but
Would you be able to email some information to me in regards to that?
For that part of grant?
Yeah, just to see how it adds, I can better understand that, because when Mark was here, it was under the impression that it was for the specific building, and I never heard that it was for the land.
I can definitely look into it.
yeah, for sure.
And a suggestion just to staff, Greenville just opened up that beautiful park, and I know the city didn't pay for it, so I don't think it's something that we should try to reinvent the wheel to do. I think we should kind of tap into those resources, because what I've seen is kind of what I envision for Henderson Park, what they've done. The shelter that they have is the shelter that I've been talking about. It had no walls,
Right, yeah.
and I know it was at least 100 by 100, and it was beautiful.
It's awesome. No.
Right.
Listen, I've been into that vision for a long time too. It deals with the flood issues. There's no walls to
Absolutely.
worry about. It can serve as a farmer's market, a
Picnic area.
picnic
the
area,
whole-
gathering
yes.
area. It can serve a lot of purposes at different times of the day and week and month.
And I believe they did it because of that park is under the same floodplain as we are.
Oh,
with it.
really?
I truly believe
Yeah,
that.
interesting.
I'm not positive on that,
Yeah,
but
sure.
that area floods a lot.
Makes
But
sense.
by them building that shelter like they did, it kind of
Yeah.
fits in that criteria that it does not have any walls whatsoever, and it's the shelter
Yeah,
what I have been envisioning for that concrete slab.
yeah. Carrie, do you know when's the last time that plan was dusted off? I saw it 6 months ago, but I was always curious, how old is that current design?
I think 2020.
Oh, really? Okay. And is that the one that has got the amphitheater?
Mhm.
Okay, all right.
The only thing that's on that plan that would no longer be a part of it is the Veterans Garden, because they're no longer
Right.
located over there.
Has this group seen that plan? Have y'all seen the plan?
No.
Okay, let's get the plan. Next agenda, gonna have the plan. Circulate the plan for y'all to see. It's been floating around for a while. Like I said, I've seen it, but you should see it, especially if you're gonna try to raise any funds. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Well, I guess, so one of the things that I thought was one of the focus points of the group was Henderson Park as well.
Yes, sir.
And if I recall, there was a whole uproar one time in regards to putting the street through Henderson Park. And I believe at that point in time, if I'm not mistaken, there was an email from Foster who mentioned that at that point, that land had to be designated as a park, if I'm not
You're
mistaken.
exactly right.
And so one of the things upon that conversation that came out in one of our meetings at Stanley White was that one of the focus points of this group was Henderson Park and the amenities out there.
Yes, sir.
The three
Absolutely.
things that I heard you mention that we were focusing on was fundraising, programming, and then community information. Would it not be appropriate to think that Henderson Park is a part of that conversation as well?
Absolutely part of the, yes, sir. And I meant to say that more clearly in the beginning. When I talk about the new Stanley White Center and Henderson Park, we view it as one campus. That
Yeah.
will be a connected one large facility.
So
Campus.
to Jamisha's point, or I guess just to be clear on what she said and then what you guys are saying, that's what I thought the understanding was that this was one campus. That land there was attached to this building based on the campus that you guys were trying to create.
Yes, yes.
Mhm.
The legal question, though, was when that part of Grant was made back in the day,
Mhm.
Henderson Park was Henderson Park. And grants, those restrictions, they're called restrictive covenants,
Mhm.
they run with the land, meaning it's recorded at the registry and it will exist for the term of that covenant on that land.
Mhm.
Not land that grows or land that you add to it, but that land. And that land must be used for a park.
Which is part of the campus kind of concept
Yes,
to the building that's going to be built there.
exactly.
Yeah.
But just because they're connected doesn't mean that that covenant now grows into something else. It doesn't.
To add to what Mr. Stewart is saying, the part of the grant has an expiration date.
It does.
So if that expiration date was tomorrow, is it still a requirement for that area to stay a park?
No. No.
Exactly.
No.
So do we need an expiration date on that grant as well?
Okay, look and see, yeah.
That's important to know.
Yeah, so because at what point so that expired in 10 years and you put that facility there, does that mean that property now, essentially that property could be used for another purpose, is what I'm hearing?
Every park can be used for another purpose.
Well, no, I understand that, but based on that, I guess it was 50 years, or I couldn't remember the time frame. I remember Foster's,
40 or 50?
no, it was for some time.
25? Okay.
Yeah, I guess that just a whole nother point that she brings up is, so I guess the concern would be, is that area always going to be a park that's attached to that?
I get that question.
Facility.
I've had that question over the course of my entire career, and the answer is every park is land owned by the local government, the city,
Mhm.
that the city can sell or do away with anytime it wants. What I recommend to overcome that issue, because people that love their parks have those feelings in their heart, and I always tell them the best thing you can do politically to keep a park is give it a name. Because it is really hard to take away some land that's got a name on it. If it's just the so-and-so field or Old Man Johnson's field, it may be a city park, but we are less connected to it than when we dedicate it and give it a name. But the actual dedication feels like it's some legal thing that ties it up forever. It's not. It just dedicates it to have that name.
During the time when Mark was here, Mark came and he read to us about Stanley White. He also said in the paper that he read, I would say, the guidelines for Stanley White. He said that a road, and he read it out loud, he said a road would never be put through that recreation area. And when we used to go out there and train our kids to play out there before they built Stanley White, or we would just call it Henderson Park. We called the whole thing Henderson Park. And they decided to put the Stanley White there, it kind of changed. Everybody still say Stanley White, but Stanley White was just at the front. And the rest behind, going on the other side of the building, going back, we call that Henderson Park. So it's always been two different avenues. Most people over the West New Bern doesn't know that, two different avenues over there.
Right.
They don't know it, you know, they don't, so no need to talk about it. But here's the key thing. As a alderman, when things change every 4 years or whatever it is, but when we first came in, that was a grant book. And the grant book about that big. That's what we got, the grant book. And the grant, and you know, every year it changes, something else comes. But I don't know whether the people in there this day and time, or whether they see a grant book, where they have a book that they can go back home and sit and flip and look at. All of a sudden, the second term, I didn't see no books and nothing. I guess they figured we still had the same books, you know. But those are things that you can use to look at and find out who or where you can get a grant. And then you find somebody else that can write that grant to carry it out for you.
Right.
But the city of New Bern used to hire grant writers. I don't know what they did. I know the police department was good at getting it. So they were able to do what they could do based off of the grants they got. So, you know, it's just knowing the books, knowing where to go get the information, and then getting somebody that can facilitate that well enough.
Yes, sir. To the concern over the park, you know, the blessing and the curse is that it's in a flood zone. So,
I have one question about that.
yeah.
Now, when I started with the city, now when I was always told, and we was told that when the property was donated, that it was in the agreement that it was supposed to stay apart forever. Now I hear something about a project
There can be restrictions. Yes, sir.
and stuff, and that's why I'm confused, because that's what I was under the impression was when the property was donated to the city, that it was written that it would stay apart forever. But now I'm hearing about another grant or something that was written.
Yeah.
And I don't
It's
understand.
entirely possible. A lot of times people will donate property with a deed restriction that lasts to the end of the world. I hereby give my land to the city of New Bern for so long as it is used as a public park. I do know that a lot of that area around there was condemned and not donated. But I do have it in my mind, Mr. Henderson, who owned all that property back in the day, he may have donated some of that. So,
They donated, it was actually the widow. Because I
Yeah.
looked at the deed, and the last time it was transferred to the city, they paid $1 in 1964.
well, that would have been just a standard
For the land?
provision. Well, that wouldn't have been for $1. Now it's $10, but it doesn't mean, that's just what you say in the deed. Was there a restriction in the deed?
I didn't see it,
Okay.
but I probably.
Okay.
With state and federal grants, there's often a restriction on it has to remain a park for, you know.
A chunk of time. Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
And that's most likely the case with that one.
I mean, I don't think that the board told me, I'm not going to speak for everybody, I speak for myself. I'm not here to change it, so if there was anything, or if that did come up, that would never be anything that I support, and I truly, honestly don't believe the board alderman is going to do anything with this except for build it up Henderson Park and build up the Stanley White area so that it can have recreation. I mean, I personally would be fearful of any of that type of stuff going on with it.
The more money that goes into it, I mean, I'm looking for deterrence. Again, I'm in the business of trying to solve a practical problem because there are no legal tools. I thought Chris was going to ask me if the city could impose its own restriction, which would be a good question. No. If you can impose it, you can remove it. So yeah, the city could impose its own restriction, and then the next board could remove the restriction. So there is no legal way to tie that up forever. So then you're just dealing with what are my practical obstacles.
Yeah. I think the appropriate thing to do would probably be to get the documentation. I definitely recall verbally, and I want to say it's in the email, that Foster said that property had to be used as deemed as a park. I'm pretty sure he told us that.
Yeah,
So-
it rings a bell. I'm with you.
Yeah.
It rings a bell.
Got it.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Just hearing about this plan that's been floating around that the advisory committee has not seen for Henderson Park, knowing that there's already a plan out there somewhere that we haven't seen, is there a list of criteria that the do's and the don'ts of building or planning for Henderson Park that we could have so that we could give to our own planners possibly
Sure,
or someone
sure.
to create their own plan? Because I would hate to go out
Yeah.
and ask a planner that I know to
Sure.
come up with something and they automatically get rejected because somehow on the plan there's something that shouldn't be there. So can we have those guidelines so that we can
Yeah,
figure
that's
this
a
out?
Carrie question. I don't know of such guidelines.
No, we don't have any specific guidelines on the development of the park. Usually, if we're developing a new park, we require public input. So,
Is that part of the, that's not part of the RFQ for that design build the park is. The park is a separate situation,
Good
yeah.
question, it's not.
Yeah.
The imagining, as you can see on the preliminary design stuff, is to create that pedestrian connection
Yeah.
from the new center down there. I've been imagining something nice and lit and wide so that kids would be safe and comfortable moving back and forth between the two. I don't mean like a little foot trail that you beat through the weeds, but something that is quite grand and open.
Is that supposed to be included in the planning of Henderson Park, or is that supposed to be included in the
I
planning
don't
of
believe
building the new
I
building?
don't believe it's part of, that's a good question. I know it's shown on the design map for the new facility, but I don't know that that's been calculated as part of the budget or not. I don't know the answer to that.
It's also important to talk about the bathrooms, in regards to them in the flood area, and I know that, I don't know if they're looking to move them.
They are.
Okay, so that.
Yeah, that's, before you got here, we announced that they're working through FEMA to get a change in scope to reimagine those bathrooms, get them out of the flood area, elevate them, keep the facilities there, for the public's benefit, but kind of reimagine from the very first draft. And maybe by next month, we'll have some news and some renderings on that.
And I know Jeff did something this weekend, do we want to talk about it? I know they're trying to kind of incorporate maybe possibly doing something.
Yeah, so Saturday we had that meeting with Mr. Reggie and a few other New Bernians, but with ECU about their capstone project,
Yeah, cool.
about creating a mural along that pathway. So I'm not quite sure how that fits into the design, but that's also been something that has been talked about. And I was going to mention it if we had new business or something here.
Interesting, yeah.
But maybe that's something to get with Jeff and find out about.
Sure.
But at least to the members here, like I said, Mr. Reggie was there, as well as Torrance, Mr. Pickett, just giving these ECU students, city planner, graduate students, a insight to Stanley White and why it's so important to our community and giving them stories. Over 3 hours we spent and took them down to go see the site. So I know that that is one potential project that is being talked about and which you guys as the advisory committee should know about. It does include our community, but it was initiated by Tabari Wallace, being an ECU graduate, and he was able to connect those dots to be able to have, they're just planning it, not that is, execution. I'm not sure how the execution's gonna go, but that's what's in the works so far.
Yeah, cool.
And going back to the plan on Henderson Park, we don't actually have a plan per se, but just trying to see what could fit in that location. What items could we use in that area of land?
Yeah, basically, I don't remember it being some official
No.
sealed, this is it, get happy
Yeah.
with it. I
Right.
think it was more of a, here's the area, here's some things that could go here and there, that looks nice, subject to somebody thinking real hard about it. So it was,
The board of aldermen, I would say.
oh, absolutely. Oh, yeah, yeah.
Is there any public info on that or no?
Do whatever the board wants. Yeah, and as Carrie said, that's a very standard thing to do for a park, is you want to get the people who it will be served by to give their input as to what can be done.
And that will be the responsibility of this committee and then to bring it back to.
Well, no, that'd be Board of Aldermen. I mean, this committee can certainly help with communication and whatnot, but yeah, the Board of Aldermen would need to kind of set the direction on that.
Okay.
Yeah. And I've, if you've been watching these meetings, I do sense some excitement and some creativity over Henderson Park and the basketball and the lights and a desire to see something get going now.
Now, on the ordinance for this committee, it talks about the programming portion for Stanley White and the Henderson Park area. Would that, amenities for that park, would that fall under the programming?
I think so. I would encourage you guys to do what you have some passion for. I mean, you know, you've all got better things to do. And to come and sit and nod and walk away is fine, but I'd rather see you come and do one thing with passion than come mumble about three things and we did it for a year and now it's on something else. So if that creates some excitement, if programming that park and folks in the park creates some excitement and passion among the board, do it. It'd be great.
Yeah, that would be a good opportunity to provide recommendations.
Absolutely. It's fun stuff too.
Yeah. Yes,
Okay, one more.
Yes, ma'am.
There was some mention as well in a prior Board of Alderman meeting from Mayor Outlaw about assisting with some of the things that could potentially happen at Henderson Park. So I know you mentioned private funding as well and us helping with fundraising, but I want to make sure that, and maybe this is a question for the Board of Alderman, that option is still on the table for us to be able to glean from the mayor or potentially the city for assistance with that park.
I heard the mayor say that myself. So
Okay.
I'll be your first witness in your trial to testify that the mayor said he was going to help crown that field. And I remind him of that every month. Yeah, so he said it, and I remind him of it. And
Thank you.
I would encourage you to hold him to it.
Will do.
I know the mayor, I'm picking on the mayor, but only because I know he helped with the community college do the exact same thing. So he knows the players, he knows what's required, he knows it's a big ask, but he's also done it once. So I could see him doing it again.
He's qualified.
He's qualified, yes.
Okay, anything else? Have a motion to adjourn?
Well, I'd like to say something before we close out. It's still for Miss Linda Henderson, if she may. Would you like to say anything?
No, I just like to gather this information, and it's really interesting information. It relates to the Stanley.
Thank you for coming.
I'm very interested in the design, you know, how, and what the gym is going to look like, and what the building will be. So, I'm very interested in finding out more information.
We are too.
I didn't want you to come all the way down here and then just sit over there and say nothing.
Thank you, thank you.
Thank you for everything you're doing for the district bar.
As an action item, can I make a suggestion that we possibly, and this is for the group, we did a lot of surveying and a lot of talking to the community about what they wanted to see inside of the new Stanley White. We never asked them what they wanted to see at Henderson Park because obviously we never fathomed it would move. But at the same time, it has now. So is there a possibility for us before the next meeting to do some sort of survey to see what the community would like to see at Henderson Park? What they want to see done with the fields and things like that, so that we at least have some information and some homework to go back and do and come back for the next meeting and have some sort of idea of what we want to do going forward. Because I'd hate to just leave here and not have some sort of action item for us. It's up to you guys. We can do it digital, we can go door to door, we can do hybrid, but I think it would be important to get input as to how they would like to see that legacy continue at that park.
But I also think that it needs to be understood that Henderson Park is Henderson Park and Stanley White is Stanley White.
We can definitely delineate that inside of the survey so that they completely understand at the beginning, this
Yes.
is what this is for.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's a big, but I think that's an outstanding idea. I mean, we have, I have a vision what I would see there, but we need the community's input, you know. I agree.
And then based off that, you're able to determine kind of budget-wise what you're looking for to raise.
Right.
Has that been done for Stanley White also? It's already been done for Stanley White?
Yes,
Yes, ma'am.
yes. We have a, CP&L, the consultants came up with a concept of what the building should look like and what should be inside the building, but that was never, I mean, they brought that to the Board of Aldermen in January,
I think that was.
January or February, that their concept of what the building should look like and everything.
And the board approved it 6-1.
Right.
Although this advisory committee did not vote for it.
I believe it was 6-1. I know I can go, I don't know if Barnes was, I think it was 6.
No, there was a public input meeting at the center, at the Omega Center, and they had asked the public to come in and tell what they wanted in the facility, and they put it on a board. So there was some public input on that. I think they tallied that information because I saw the email on that. So there was, on that piece, there was some public information on it, public input.
No doubt it was, but we didn't agree that that's what should be in the building.
Ultimately.
Ultimately, right.
Well, if you guys, if you want to look at doing some type of survey, that's something we can look into, whether you want to do, something digital or put something out. All different avenues.
Hybrid, just because people receive their information differently throughout our community.
Okay. We can work on that.
And possibly maybe a newspaper, like how we did with the public meeting, the public input meeting, that lets people know. I mean, and I'm sure we can talk about this later, how to market the survey or how to get it out to the community, but just some sort of announcement that this survey is coming in addition to the work that has already been done on Stanley Way.
It might be a good idea because of, well, I know all of it is important, it's possibly probably takes nothing to equip something there with surveys covering from rain, pencil and box, and do your survey and put it in there.
Sure.
Just in case because of COVID, everybody is obviously busy now, obligated to be able to go door to door. People don't use internet sometimes, and it's there, and we push it and say, well, we can stop at Parks and Rec just to have these surveys and collect them because people go and drop the kids off still. So I think we can possibly do that. I don't think it would be hard to make one of those boxes.
Yeah.
To be able to do that so people can really drive by and.
I believe that's the avenue we used for the input on the center as well. That was one avenue, because I think we had some drop-off locations at, it was either RCS or Promise Place maybe, that we had some boxes for drop-off of paper surveys.
And if you get it to me electronically, I'll push it out
Yeah.
on the community email that we have, so we'll get it out to local churches and everything. We'll get it out to as many people as possible. If you get it, I'm an electronic guy, so if you get it to me electronically, I'll push it out.
I don't know if the ECU Capstone kids might have an interest in helping in some way organize the information. It's one thing to have 50 or 100 responses, and now what? What do we do with that? And how do we transfer that into a plan?
Statistics.
And I know we have the bandstand is new since that plan, because I remember looking at that plan thinking, oh, that amphitheater might now be better imagined to have a concert area where you can move, but you got to make sure you can move that bandstand in and out easily. So there's some things more practical to kind of think through.
Okay.
And I'll send you guys the ECU kids, that contact information. They're looking for also, if you have old pictures of Stanley White or that area, Henderson Park area, they would love to collect those so that they could somehow be incorporated in the mural.
I think too, when you do a survey, you want to kind of be specific or have a box for people to put in notes. I mean, kind of like guided ideas of what could possibly go there, so you can probably just get it. I mean, what type of survey questions would you technically ask? Like this, what do you want to see here? It's written out, or check boxes. I'm just thinking about making it convenient for everybody to be able to kind of fill out and not just discouraged by having
Or a ranking,
presentation.
they have a ranking system where you just give 20 ideas, rankings in order of preference, so at least it's something meaningful to do.
Definitely lists like park amenities that people would like to see, and have them rank or.
And even if they have an idea of what we're going to dedicate and name that area, like we were talking about, if it has a name, I don't know, Stanley White Recreation Campus, I don't know, but if we ask them for
I thought it's
ideas.
Henderson Park already. It's a sign, isn't it, Jay?
Yes, it's already Henderson Park.
And then the walking trail was named after Captain James Benton. So you got the walking trail is named after him, and the exercise area And then the field is Henderson Park, it says Henderson Park Field. So, and it has a sign out there that
Yeah,
says
that's
Henderson
correct.
Park Field.
Understandable. I just wanted to know, are we going with the suggestion of, is the whole campus gonna have a dedication name, so it makes it harder to change it to something else later?
Well, I think it just be, we dedicate that whole campus as Henderson Park,
Yeah, it need to stay Henderson.
Henderson Park Field or Henderson Park Campus.
And then you run it up, or maybe run it up to the.
Right, up until Chapman Street, because it's not, it's further in. So we did it at the beginning of Chapman Street where it said Stanley White. We just moved the Stanley White sign and moved the Henderson Park sign up there. Now that whole campus is, that whole land, the 30, 40 acres is Henderson Park.
No, I
Yeah, I would just say.
I get it.
Dedicated.
Yeah, Henderson Park.
I think that is.
But maybe that's part of why we're,
Yeah.
What you think, Fred?
I have a,
Can it be slash? Can it be Henderson slash?
I think it just should stay Henderson Park. Since we moved.
I have a question. You know, we were talking about artifacts and pictures, and something just popped in my. Jay, what happened to all the trophies and memorabilia from the Pop Warner football teams and everything that was there?
In storage.
It's in storage? Okay.
Praise the Lord.
Yes.
That was another thing community members asked at board meetings, and I think also during the public input about possibly having a room dedicated to the different organizations that go there, like the permanent community.
And I think that's something we should concentrate on as a board, that, you know, I have a vision that I will share with you guys. And I,
You know, the J.T. Baldwin, artifacts, the J.T. Baldwin High School, we use for that. They have a clear space to display their artifacts as well.
I mean, that building is spacious to be able to input history throughout the whole building and not just necessarily in one room. So I think
oh, no doubt, no doubt.
as long as-
Every room should have a historical meaning and background.
And we
If
need
it's
to
a,
advocate for that.
right, if it's a J.T. Barber room, we explain why it's a J.T. Barber room, and we have artifacts dealing with J.T. Barber. You know, if it's a room for book, you explain why that room is there for book and artifacts, things of that nature. You know, so it can be not just a recreational facility, but it'll be a historical recreational facility. And I mean, I know we gotta go, but that's the vision I see on the building.
I agree. That I actually advocate for it.
That's right, and I'm hoping that we would advocate for some of the organizations that want to, especially those organizations that spend their communities.
Right, that was in the old Stanley White. Absolutely, I agree 100%.
And lastly, there's probably the ability to do some sort of brick by brick fundraising so that if people buy $1 or $10, they can get the organization and put it right in on the ground, and that helps as well.
Like the
So
picture
that
that
if
kid's
we
movie.
miss some people or we don't get everything, people, you're walking on history. So I just think if now we have that mindset after everything that happened and we try to push positivity, I think people are still going to be supportive, and I think any way that they can be incorporated by a family name, anything, to be a part of the new building is going to be, important as well, so.
That should be our,
That would be good for,
that's the best fundraiser right there, that
And
brick,
I'm going to say it on Tuesday as well, on the new building.
that brick building, they'll sell a brick, sell bricks.
because
I'm
going
on
in
first,
the
I'll
brick by
talk to
brick.
Foster to see if that's something that he thinks is feasible, and then if so, then we can initiate it and try to start getting that rolling in, because I know this thing's going to sell out.
Are you ready to adjourn?
That's a good idea. That brick company. That'll work.
yes,
So,
everybody likes to see their name.
Yes.
They walk down, they have and see the names of family members that live there, that,
There's a generation involved, they can see their family.
also having dedication of any of the history as well too, of just names, because I know there's a plethora of people, even you, Alderman Bernard, all the stuff that you did with the football and stuff, like, you should have a name on a brick just for what you donated You know what I'm saying? I just think that's important as well.
Maybe for the
And
next,
original Stanley White was the Omega Center, a brick that had that, you know what I'm saying? It just, all of the history should just be told in that building.
maybe for the next agenda, we can have fundraising on there to discuss, and y'all can bring back ideas that you've come up with, or even if you run across any grants that might be a possibility, you want to shoot them over to me so I can look at that and see if it's something we could use. Definitely can do that.
Yeah, because probably frame it how you want to do it. And last thing, I move that we adjourn.
Second.